Hello everyone.
One of the things I've been wanting to do with this pole barn ever since we moved in here was to put some automatic garage door openers on the front doors here. I actually have one on the back, but there's two doors here, and it would be very convenient to have these on an automatic opener. Especially this time of year, the weather's about to turn wintry, and it'll be a lot nicer to be able to just push a button, have the door open, drive a vehicle out, and push a button and drive away. So that's what this video is about. I'm installing the garage door opener on this door. I want one on both, but for budgetary reasons I'm doing one at a time. There's one thing slightly different from the standard garage door opener installation, is that this door is 8 feet high and the standard is 7. So there's actually a rail extension kit that needs to be installed so that it'll open the full 8 feet. And I'll show you how that's done as well. So let's go inside and have a look at things. So I have my F-150 tucked in the back there for the winter. It never goes out in the road salt, so it stays in here all winter. And my Ranger is over here off to the side. It's not quite centered in the barn, but there's enough space on the other side for my tractor to go in and out. And so it encroaches a little bit on the space coming in through that door. So this is a little bit tight of a squeeze, but there's plenty of space to bring my Mustang in here to leave for the winter when I'm done working on it. And meanwhile, we'll be able to put one of the Subarus in here for those cold winter nights when we have ice and snow in the morning, and someone's going to be able to just drive right out of here without clearing snow or ice off the car. So it's a convenience thing. And you can see the original electricians installed receptacles for garage door openers. There's one there that covers this door, and that door over there has a receptacle up there. So it's been a very long time since this door has had any tune-up work done on it or lubrication, and listen to this. So the first thing I'm going to do is lubricate the coil spring up there, torsion spring, and the wheels and tracks, and see if I can get this thing running smoother and quieter. So I'm using silicone lubricant spray on these springs. I'm going to do the other side too, but give the torsion springs a good soaking of the silicone. Spray lubricant. Gonna let that soak in for a minute. And meanwhile, all these hinges need to be lubricated as well because they do squeak. So I'll just give a little shot here and there. And it helps to lubricate the rails to spray it. I'm just going to do the top because it's going to run down. And I'll do the other side the same way. Okay, so let's see if that helps. So now that that's done, when the door is at half height, the spring tension on the cables should hold it open, and that's pretty good. It seems like the spring tension is correct on this. I might get some 3-in-1 oil to work on those hinges a bit. They're still really loud.
I'm putting a drop or two of 3-in-1 oil on all the hinge friction points. Actually a bit more because it's difficult to control.
Okay, let's see how this sounds. Much better. It's these center hinges that make the most noise. Now I'm going to go ahead and oil these hinges as well on both sides. Okay, all the hinges on the door are now lubricated, so let's see how that sounds. Wow, that's much better. It's important to do regular maintenance on these doors, and especially that torsion spring, but everything, they need to operate smoothly. And it especially helps if you have an automatic garage door opener, because if these are not operating smoothly, it puts an extra load on the door opener. I've always maintained on a pretty regular basis the garage doors up on the house, the attached garage, but down here in the barn, they get attention few and far between, so it's good to do it now, especially before putting an automatic door opener in. Great. So I'm just confirming where the center is on this header. I marked 4.5 feet there. It's a 9-foot door. The header is going to be a little longer than that. It'll be a little longer than 9 feet, or it should be.
That's my first mistake. The door is 10 feet wide. This will throw me off for a little while until it bothers me enough to remeasure.
4.5 feet there. And that's about 12.5 inches between them. So I'm remarking the center of the door. It's been bothering me that it was so far off. And I discovered I made a bad mistake. I assumed that these doors were the same width as the doors up on the house, and they're not. These are 10 feet wide, not 9 feet. So the center is at 5 feet.
That torsion spring mount being in the center might create a problem. It really should be close to the middle of the spring shaft, but if it interferes with the garage door opener rail, I might need to move it to one side or the other.
I can mark the header at 5 feet.
This remains to be seen.
There's the extra long belt to accommodate the 8-foot rail. And there's the rail section that gets added for an 8-foot door. There's the push buttons for the outside of the door. That's the pulley assembly that goes on the end of the rail near
On top of the motor.
There's the trolley that rides on the rail. And the lenses for the lamps on either side of the garage door opener motor unit. Oh, there's the pulley for the end of the rail. There's the push button unit for inside the door to open and close. Rail hardware. There's some hardware, mounting screws and bolts, and a bunch of wire staples to hold the wires in place. A couple screws and what is probably a belt guard. More door hardware. We'll get to all of it. There's the rails and some of the motor hanging hardware, angle brackets. Well, those are the brackets for the sensors. Motor lift bar, or the door lift bar. The wires. One of the remote push buttons. These are the buttons that you would keep in your car. There's another remote. And last but not least, the drive head. It's smaller than I thought it would have been. That's interesting. Genie model 2055. So there's the other part of that door lift bar. There's the belt that would have been used with just the 7-foot rail. So this is a completely spare belt that will never be used, because I'm going to be using the 8-foot belt. The manual, programming, operation, and maintenance manual. Okay. Chain belt drive, opener assembly, and installation instructions. So there's the instructions. Step 1 is assemble the opener. I'm going to use the orange parts bag. Parts bags are color coded. That's interesting. And the rails, the trolley, and the sprocket and the end pulley, and so on. So let's get started on that. Here's the original end piece that would have the return pulley on it. And you can see the difference here between the 7-foot rail piece and the 8-foot rail piece. Adds an extra foot. So these rail pieces just slide together end to end. They fit very loosely, so it's no big deal. No, doesn't take any force. And I put this extension piece on this end, which is toward the door. There's a pin that this pulley rides on, and a clip that holds it in. So this trolley that rides on the rail has arrows. There's an arrow that points toward the door, so it's going on the rail with the door on that end, and this is the bottom. So it just slides on there. Okay, this sits on top of the motor, and the motor drive shaft comes up through this spline. But so the motor will be on the bottom. So this just goes right in the end here, and that's that. So this turnbuckle has an indicator with an arrow that says towards the door, and that goes in here towards the door. It's actually held in place with this catch. So there's different color threaded ends. The gold threaded end goes in toward the door. Oops. Left-hand thread. This is the extra long extended 8-foot belt. It's the belt that's used for the 8-foot rail. Going around this pulley on the front, which actually has cog teeth on it. Got to hold both sides here so they don't twist, so the belt doesn't twist. And turn this tight. The belt is properly tensioned when it sags to the point where it's a 1/4 inch above the bottom of the rail on this side. And I just eyeballed it. It's a 1/4 inch right there. So it's got a 7/16 hex nut right in the center there. So you can tighten these nuts up. So there's an indicator on this with arrows pointing the doors in that direction. You slip this spline over this spline. And then these are 7/16 bolt heads, screw heads. This just slips over it, slips over the rail like that. These are just sheet metal screws, and they're going into this metal, which is frankly not very thick. So be careful not to over tighten it. You can strip them out easily, I think. So this is a belt guard that goes over the end of this by this sprocket or cog pulley here. And it comes with 2 little screws to hold it in place. You're screwing into plastic here, so I got to be careful not to over tighten it. Okay, I've got to find the highest point. When the door is opening, it reaches a high point. It's probably right about there. It's right in there. So I need to measure 2.5 inches higher than that high point. The high point is about 6.5 inches below this joist. Double check. 6 3/4.
Okay, I have to remove this 4x6 block someone sandwiched between the 2x on either side of it. This was a strange way the people who installed these doors provided a mounting support for the spring bracket, but it doesn't provide the correct mounting surface for the spring bracket when the door opener rail has to be mounted there as well.
So I'm going to use this bar. I actually have 3 of these bars that I collected over the years. These are actually from a 1960s vintage Volkswagen Beetle. They're the jack handle. They came with the Volkswagens. I have 3 of these that I gathered up over the years. A couple of these I've had since like 1975. I also have this one, which is a 3/8 rod, maybe a little bigger, that has a screwdriver tip on it. And I don't remember where I got it from. Someone must have cut off the screwdriver handle to make a pry bar out of it. It's got a little bend in it. But this works good too. And I'm going to use these to unwind the spring tension on the torsion spring. So the first thing I'm going to do is mark this thing so I know what position it was in. And then I'll be using these bars to gradually unwind it. And it looks like this one here is too long. It'll hit that joist. So I'll use 2 of the shorter ones. Oh boy. That one hits also. That's funny. This one doesn't. Huh. All right. Well, so the first thing to do in this process is to loosen up these set screws. That hold this into place, or they keep it from rotating on the shaft. I'll be wearing gloves for this. And holding that. I don't want it to rapidly unwind. It's trying to rotate that way to open the door. So. That one's loose. There's 2 of these set screws. Wow. There's a lot of force on that. So that mark is here, so that's 1 rotation. Two rotations. Three rotations. I'm going to get down here a little bit. Four rotations. Five. Oh, that was 6. Seven. Eight. Can't let go of them. Well, that was about 9. And the tension is off this roller here, off the shaft. There's 2 lag screws holding this in here. There's one. And there's the second one.
Now the bracket and spring can be moved out of the way temporarily. That block isn't centered and it isn't wide enough to support the spring shaft bearing mount and the door opener rail. So it has to come out and be replaced with a wider, flat piece of lumber.
Because that rail from the door opener needs to mount in this location, over here in the center. Well, there's a problem here because these 3 are screwed in from the back there. So this was installed before the siding. So I'm going to have to get in there behind and between all these to cut the screws.
I used a DeWalt reciprocating saw to start cutting the screws or nails that were fastening those 3 blocks of wood to each other and to the framing behind them. The blades I started out with weren't really long enough to be flexible and bend into the tight spaces the saw had to fit into. This turned into a fiasco that took way too long, so I won't show it all. I was cutting through only construction screws. Nails are a lot softer and easier. I had to go to the home center for longer blades. My batteries overheated so they wouldn't charge until they cooled down. And my DeWalt cordless saw actually broke halfway into it. So I switched to my old Makita corded saw.
I got a longer blade, reach down in there. I couldn't get down in far enough to get this nail. Fresh battery. Gotta get this block off of here now.
I had to square off the top of that block because the clowns who installed it this way didn't use square cut lumber for this. I need it square so I can run the saw across the flat top of that block.
This is broken. So here's my good old corded Makita.
There were at least 5 screws through the back of that block and another 5 on each side. I replaced the screws I had to cut from this board by towing them into the rim board behind them. Then I reinstalled the other 2x4 I removed from the block, 16 inches from the original one.
Now the reason I screwed that there, instead of over here where it was, that block was sandwiched between this and this, and the way they installed it, the block came out even with this surface. Well, that's just stupid. If you put these here, you could put another 2x over here, and you'll have a whole flat surface here that's even with this surface. Why they monkeyed around with those 4x6 blocks is beyond me. It was just idiotic. So now I've got to find some lumber to go across here to here. And I might even just go all the way over to there, where this board is nailed in on the end. These are just a couple of spare scraps I had laying around. So they're both pressure treated, they're both still solid, so I'm going to use them. All that matters is that they're still solid. Okay, that brings this mounting bracket out to where it needs to be. And then the trolley rail for the door needs to come in up here, over here. Actually, that's coming in on the center of the door here, so I'm gonna have to move this over a little. Maybe. I think what I'll do is I'll mount that first and then decide where this is going. Okay, so I have a 4-foot mason square here clamped to the bottom of these joists, and I'm going to measure down. If you remember, I measured down from the bottom of the joist 6.5 inches, and that's the high point of the door opening. So that's down here. Oh no, down here. I have to hang it up from the top. Measure it to down here. Okay. Double check. 6.5. So what I'm doing is I'm hanging it off the top there and measuring down 6.5. Because the top of this is the bottom of this. So this bracket that the rail attaches to gets mounted 2.5 inches above the door's highest point of travel. So the door, I just marked the highest point of travel there. So now I need to mark 2.5 inches above that. Okay, and that actually is almost 4 inches below the rafter here, so there's plenty of, or the joist, or you could say the bottom of the truss. So there's plenty of clearance there for the rail to be mounted here. So this gets set up here. So I'm just checking the top of this door for level. And it's actually between the marks. It's pretty darn level right there. And so the reason I wanted to check that level is because I'm marking this center line of the door up here and here. Not perfect, but close enough. So I have this edge of the level on the mark where I marked the center of the door. And according to this, it's perfectly plumb right there. So I'm going to remark this. This will be better. This will be more accurate. Beautiful. So now I can center this bracket on that line. And mark the holes. Mark where the holes are going to be. Now I can drill those holes and install the bracket. Okay, the instructions call for 2 of these, so that's it. This is just hung up here with a pin through the bracket, and then there's a little clevis pin that keeps that pin from coming out.
I didn't record it, but the rail was centered by the center marked on the fully open door. In other words, I opened the door and aligned it with the center mark on the top of the door. You don't have to have help with this, but a helper to lift and hold the drive end of the door opener while you're securing it is strongly advised. You can rest it on top of an 8-foot ladder like I did at first, but I think it's best to secure it like this.
So after I hung that end of the rail above the door, I used this rope here over the truss and lifted this up and tied it off just to hold it in place. I have to check to make sure that it's basically level. The problem with that is that these rails are so loose and sloppy that leveling it is kind of a joke. I think basically I just need to measure it from the far end there. Well, I need to measure it from this joist to the top of the rail, and then do the same thing on that end and try to make them about equal. That's the best you can do for leveling this, I think. Yep, that's just about 2 7/8. Just a little under 2 7/8. And just by luck maybe, the other end was just under 2 7/8. So this is as level as it can be. Now I have to start working on the supports to hold everything up. And so I'm going to need a couple 2x4s to span this gap. That will be 26 inches long. These are 24 on center, but 26 to overlap.
I placed the 2x4 supports across the top of the truss joists because that's the simplest way to do it. Then I'm using a speed square to square them up with the joists. Next, I hung a plumb bob from the edge of the 2x4s to align that edge with the door opener support flanges that are there to hang the opener from.
Yeah, that's good.
A nut and bolt fasten the door opener hanging straps to the top flange.
These started out as angle brackets, but I flattened them out because the surfaces I'm attaching them to with fasteners are on the same plane.
So the pre-punched hole spacing doesn't work.
Okay, so I used a level to make sure that those brackets are straight up and down or plumb. And then I leveled it here to make sure this is level. And then I marked the holes up there. So I've got to drill 2 holes and then I can put the lags in. And that'll be it for hanging this up. Well, I tightened the nut and bolt there, and then that'll be it for hanging it up. So I put a towel over the top here to catch the sawdust. Yeah, did pretty good. Keeping it clean up there. Okay, that's that. It's hung up there. Well, now that it's hung up, I can start running the wires for the sensors and for the push button. So you can see I have the 3 wires attached to the unit there. I just loosely strung the photocell wires over here. I'm going to neaten everything up and make it permanent. But they run over here to the photocells. And you can see that one of the photocells has a red LED and the other has a green LED.
I cut the supplied roll of wire into 3 equal pieces. This works fine for an 8x10 garage door.
So right now they're aligned, but when you block them, I'm going to put this piece of wood between them. You can see the red one starts flashing. That tells you the beam is broken. And now it's not broken, so it's safe for the door to close. The beam has to be satisfied in order for the door to move in the downward direction. So I'm going to push the button on the console now, the wall mount console. And we can see that the trolley is headed toward the door, meaning the door is closing if it were attached to the door. And that's the end point I set on it just for testing. And then I push the button again. The trolley's moving closer to the motor. And the door is opening if it were connected. All right, I'll show one more check. So now I'm going to hit the button. You'll see the trolley moving, and I'm going to go break the beam, and it should stop in reverse direction. So we saw that work as well. So when the beam gets broken while the door's going down, or at any time, it means there's an object blocking the beam or a person, or since these photo cells are supposed to be set like 5 inches from the ground, it's in case there's a child there. So a child or adult laying on the ground, or someone who fell down or isn't paying attention, the door won't come down and hit them. And when it gets blocked, when the beam gets blocked while the door is moving, it stops and goes back the other direction and opens the door. That way a person won't get hit. So now I can see how this fits under here. I'm not sure if that's good or not. I'll have to put a level on the bar here to see if that position is level or not. Definitely not level there. And it's not level there. See, this is why I was concerned that these were going to be too close together. This thing wants to be all the way up here. I think I won't put the spring underneath the rail. I'll mount it on this side. That seems like a better position for it. The holes for these bolts that hold the spring mount to the bracket are elongated. So I want to go ahead and make an adjustment there on that. By moving these slots, the way this is dangling is straight. It's going to dangle straight, so I can move the bracket in these slots so that the base of the bracket is flat against the mounting surface. And since the slots are at a 45-degree angle, if I move it out on the slot, it also moves the bar up a little bit. So I need to get this tightened up in this position where it's flat. That is, the base is flat against the mounting surface. It's out just a little bit still. It's not quite against the mounting surface. So I'm going to go ahead and adjust it by loosening these bolts, moving the bracket in the bolts in the slot in the bracket until the bracket is flat up against there without me pushing on it. See right there, it should be flat against it, but there's about a 1/16 of an inch, 3/32 maybe, of gap. And I want to get that gap out of there so that the shaft runs straight. So I'm going to use my Klein digital angle gauge. Put this, it mounts on magnetically, so right now it's showing 1.6 degrees slope down. And as I raise this, that's 0.4. That's 0 right there.
I found a block that's almost exactly the height I need to match the shaft height on the end to my left.
That's reading 0.1, 0.2 degrees too high now. Point 0.3. About as good as I can get it.
This is close enough to mark the vertical slot that's used to set the correct height of the shaft and spring bracket.
The top hole in this bracket is slotted, so I'm going to drill right in there and allow it a little bit of space to move up and down. It needs to move down more than up at this point. So I'm going to drill a hole there, screw it up there, and then I can mark the bottom holes on it once I know everything's level. That says 0.3 down, so it needs to go up a little bit. Okay. Zero over there, it's reading 0. Now it's reading 0.1 up. We can live with that. As long as this side of the shaft is the same thing, I've got to check that. So I put the digital angle gauge on that pipe down there on that shaft. And here it reads 0 degrees, it's perfectly level. Down there on the other end of that spring, it's reading 0.9 down. So it's sloping down towards that, which means that these two drums were never level with each other anyway. So now I need to split the difference. So that's 0.9 down that way. This is level. So I'm going to set this to be 4.5 down, and hopefully then that one will be 4.5 down as well. That's 0.2. 0.2, 0.3, whoops, it dropped. That's a full 1. to raise this back up again. So like there. 0.3. And it's going to drop. .6. That's too much. 0.6. 0.6. And this mounting surface is just uneven enough, so I'm having trouble. There. Walks down. 0.6 down. 0.2. That says 0.4. Now it says 0.3. Just bang it up a little bit. Oh, it's 0.2 down. I want it to be down more. 0.3. 0.2. 0.3. That's about 0.4 there. Point 4. Point 4. Okay. Now I have to check the other side, and I see it kind of toggling between 0.4 and 0.5, so that's kind of a good sign. So over here the gauge is reading 0.4, 0.5, kind of toggling. So that tells me they're both at the same angle, both sides of that center bearing. So now, although the shaft is running downhill from that side over to here, 0.4 degrees, at least it's straight. That's the main, that's what I was shooting for. It needs to be straight and reasonably level, which it is. Okay, that's mounted. It's about 3 inches from the center, which is pretty good. You want that bearing to be as close to the center as possible, but as long as the shaft has support in the middle, which it does, I'm satisfied with that. So one of these cables came off the drum. These are the cables that lift the bottom of the door. So it comes in the back here, and there's an outer groove on the drum that it fits into. And it needs to catch in this slot here, wrap around this groove. And that's it. The other side is still in. I gotta say that these cables are just slightly a different length. I might need to adjust that, but hold it in place, hold the shaft in place with a vice grip. That way they won't unwind again. This in here is too loose. I'm going to tighten this drum up.
I rotated the shaft to tighten the cable's hand tight, but the cable on the other end appears to be a little shorter than the cable on this end.
The drums have set screws on them, just like the spring tensioner. If I can get on it.
It's frustrating to use an adjustable wrench on these. I switched to an open-end wrench to finish the job.
So I loosen those set screws and now the drum will rotate on the shaft. I'm just going to hold it tight, hold it tight so that the cable's tight, and then lock these down again. Hopefully I can do that with only two hands. Well, that's holding it. So this is a 3/8 inch open end wrench and that works just fine. Okay, that's tight. No more slack in that cable. Now I'm getting ready to wind the spring up. So here we go. So there's my mark. That's one rotation, one wind. That's it. I think that's 8. Did I lose track? I lost track. We're almost there. Okay, well, it gets another quarter turn. That's 9. Whoops, wrong way. Those are tight. Get that off of there. Need to get this out of here. And there we go. Okay, the wires are all temporarily just hung up out of the way so they won't interfere with the door. Let's see how this goes. Goes good. It's pretty light. I don't think that opener is going to have any trouble with this door. So I'll just send that trolley down near the door. There's a pin here that holds this. And a hairpin to hold that pin in. Plug this pin. And this goes to the door with another pin. It has another clip to hold that pin in. There's no good place to install it on this door. That's just sheet metal, and if I put it on, like say at the top edge, then it just hangs off and you only get 2 screws in there. So I realized I need to install a reinforcement bracket here. They have garage door reinforcement brackets, so that's what I'm going to do. So this is adjustable. It comes with the hardware to set the length of this thing, the height. And it would be, I think I'm going to install it in here this way, but there's a little problem. Like everything else, there's a problem, which is that this is formed and shaped, and so at the bottom and at the very top, it's not flat to where I need to screw it. So you might be able to see it better from this angle. If I hold this flat, it's on this raised panel, and you can see there's a gap here and here. And I'd like to have that flat on the front so that it's holding up against that inner crease, and the same on the bottom. So I'm going to have to bend these flaps. This is now a flap. I'm going to have to bend this to conform with the sheet metal here and here. So I'm going to just do that with a hammer on top of my vise and see how that works out. Okay, I think that'll work fine. I don't have enough of these holes lining up to bolt it together though. So I'm going to mark it in this position and drill some holes.
I actually ground about 1/16 off the top of the bracket to make it fit.
Needs to be centered on that center mark. And squared up, or plumbed up.
I went around to the outside to push the screws in.
Need someone on the other side of the door to hold that screw for me.
I'm thinking I should keep a socket set in the barn. It won't stay still. Nope, that one's all the way through. Just using the end of the screwdriver to push over on the screw and pin it against the side so it won't turn while I start these nuts. Okay, the next one over. You have to have a helper to do this. Okay, the next one up.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm going to put the pin in. Now I got 3 bolts up here tightened and 3 down here tightened. It's nice and secure. Time to put the pin in. There's 3 positions here for the pin. And then of course the clip that holds the pin in. Okay. That's 19 and a half degrees, so that's good. It just has to be less than 30 degrees. So it's important to point out that the trolley is free here. It's not engaged with the drive belt. So you can just move it around and do your adjustments without the belt interfering, because this is free to slide back and forth. I neatened up the wiring. I ran them all in an orderly fashion, stapled to the top of the joist. And where they meet at the wall over there, one wire goes over this way and down to this sensor. And the other one goes over here and down to that sensor. And the third wire, you can see there's two and one there. The third one goes across the top of that joist, drops down over here to the push button console. So those photo eyes are supposed to be 5 or 6 inches above the floor, but the floor here is obviously not even or level. So it was difficult to determine where it should be 5 or 6 inches above. But in order to make sure they were both at the same height, at the same level, I measured from the top of the door down instead of from the floor up. And then these are installed by just putting a couple screws in the brackets there, as you can see there, making sure they're perpendicular to the post. The door locking mechanism is unlocked, so it'll be permanently in that unlocked position. And now I'm going to try to lift the door and try to engage that trolley with the slide there into the trolley. There it is. And now I'll hit the button and it'll open the door. Okay, so it's not open all the way. This can go up a good 8 or 9 inches more. And obviously it's not, when I hit the button, we'll see that it doesn't close all the way. Okay, so the door needs to go down at least another foot more by looking at the locking mechanism. That's at least a foot. And then we know it needs to go up another 9 inches to a foot. So I need to adjust the open and close position manually up at the head, up at the control unit. Okay, so press and hold the down arrow button.
When the blue light comes on, release the button and the other light starts blinking. Press and hold the down arrow button again until the door is closed. If the door opener drives the door too hard on the bottom, back it off with the up arrow button. You might need to go back and forth a little bit until the door is in a good closed position.
Okay.
When you're done, press the program button. The LED light should go out. I'm opening the door from the outside keypad.
I activated it from the push button out here. Yeah, it's got a good foot to go before it's all the way up. So now I press and hold the up button until the blue light comes on. Now the other blue light is flashing, and I press and hold the up button until the door's to the position I want. Wow, that's very open. Maybe not quite that far. That's good. Now just press the program button. Done. So it's a couple days later, and I don't like the way that unit is wiggling back and forth while it's operating. So I'm going to open the door now, and you'll see what it looks like opening. And then I'll close it, and you'll see it really moves around more when it's closing. It moves around a little bit while it's opening, not much. I think it stays pretty stable because it's got an even load on it. Yeah, that bottom panel tends to oil can. Alright, now I'll close it and watch the thing move back and forth. So I'm just going to put some plumber strap on it to stabilize it so it won't move back and forth like that. I'll just attach it here with a short screw and a washer and the nut on the back here. So just a 1/4 screw, 1/2 inch long. The same screws I used to secure that brace on the door, on the garage door there. It's too close to me, I need my close-up glasses. But then this will just come over to here. And I'll just screw it to the truss here. That'll keep it from swinging that way. And then I'll put one on the other side. Now that pulled it tight. Okay, let's give it a test. The door's going to open. Rock steady. As I would expect, I made it really tight. Okay, door closing. Rock steady. That was the goal. I just adjusted the full open position, and that looks really good. So the positioning for up and down is completed and the door's ready to use. I think everything's done.
Thank you for watching. Please take a moment to like and subscribe.